Welcome to the Method Podcast, where we talk to designers at Google about work, life, and the future of design. I'm Aidan Simpson, and today we're talking with two designers, Fiona Yeung.
Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm an interaction designer on the material design team, and I've been at Google for the last 2 years.
And Alison Boncha.
Hi, I'm Alison Boncha. I'm an interaction designer on the Google shopping team, and the product I work on is Google Express.
Fiona and Alison are two leaders of Hexagon, a community of women and non-binary individuals who are interested in UX. Keep listening to hear the story behind Hexagon's rebrand, how their core values have evolved, and how they've managed tremendous growth. So let's get started. Why did you guys start Hexagon?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of the history. I've been with Hexagon since 2013, and it started really as a way to foster UX community outside of Google. And I wanted to be a part of it because my first 2 years, really it was 2 years, it sounds like a long time, but it was really like a lot of like imposter syndrome. I felt like I was floating in a vast ocean trying to keep my head above water. And so one of my design peers, Bryn Evans, she told me about this thing that they were doing. It was called XX plus UX at the time. And I was like, yes, I want to do this. I want to help with this. I want to like just create community outside of Google. That was just really intriguing to me.
And for you, why was it important that community would help you get over this feeling of imposter syndrome?
I think what I've learned is that the more you talk with other people about things that you're going through, the more it makes you feel like you're not the only one. So going to these events and then sort of having these little, at first it's like little whispered conversations like, oh my gosh, this thing happened to me in this meeting. And then you learn about somebody else, they're like, oh my gosh, that also happened to me. And then you're like, wow, it's not just me. And so that feeling of almost like camaraderie and community and like learning from one another and then being like, well, what do you think we should do from here? Like, how do we sort of get over this? So I saw little glimpses of that at Google, but I think talking about it with people outside of Google really like hit home.
And just to be clear, so XX and UX started as primarily a community for female designers.
Yes, that's primarily what it was. In the beginning, I was on the Google Plus team, and for whatever reason, we had a huge design team, but we didn't have a whole lot of women designers. So our design manager at the time was basically like, all right, go forth and find these women designers that you want to hire. So it might have started with sort of like a slant for recruiting, but really it's not about recruiting. Really, it's just like get to know the people outside.
Fiona, I'd probably like to ask the same question to you. Like, why is Hexagon important to you personally?
I came to Google because I had so much mentorship prior and other experiences where I had female mentors. I've always wanted to have an impact on community just because it helped me so much throughout my student career and just getting to Google. So I always wanted to give back to the community. When I joined my team at Google, it was primarily like very senior people, dominantly male, still is. And I really craved to be like surrounded by women more, not even just in a career sense, but just like for support as well. So being on Hexagon really helped me develop skills in other areas that I felt like I was struggling to develop in my own team because of the imposter syndrome and, feeling that seniority thing where I was so much younger and less experienced. So Hexagon kind of gave me that space to grow a little bit more.
This might be a hard question to answer, but what did imposter syndrome feel like for you?
Well, I still have it. Imposter syndrome, it's funny because I actually gave a talk at Berkeley to the students about imposter syndrome. But for me, it's this constant nudging fear that they're going to think that I'm not as good as they expected me to be when they first hired me. Everyone around me is so much more senior. So there's always this feeling like, why did they pick me? Like, I'm so much less experienced. I don't know all this technical stuff that, all the other teammates do. Like, there's always this fear of like, oh man, like she's not doing that well. Even though I talked to my manager and I realized, you know what, like I am doing well. So I told the students at Berkeley that I actually have a Yay folder. Like, it's literally called Yay. So it's like a reminder of like when I feel doubtful of like where I am, that like, I actually am doing great. And that kind of helps relieve the imposter syndrome.
It's like your own personal brag slam.
Yeah. It's still being humble in a way where you're just acknowledging your achievements and, being proud of yourself. And with being with Hexagon as well, it really helped remind me like the impact that I can make as well as what others do for me.
Last year you changed your name. Why did you feel like it was necessary to change to Hexagon from XX and UX?
3 big reasons, I think. So first being that XXUX it's kind of hard to say and hard to understand what it is. A lot of people in the beginning were like, wait, what does that mean? And we had to sort of explain like, oh, like XX, the
it
chromosome.
Doesn't sound good. It's hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
The hashtag.
Oh my gosh, the hashtag.
As like the social media manager, I was filtering out so many different inappropriate things all the time.
Yeah. And we would get creepers like finding XXUX on our like social media, like Facebook page, Google Plus, wanting to get in and then not realizing it was like this community of women in UX. So there was a lot of things. And then obviously the most important one being like the attachment to biology. Like in the beginning, I mean, honestly, 2013, and I was very ignorant of this in the beginning, having such an attachment to biology is really limiting and really unfair to the trans community. Yeah.
For me, I learned so much in the last year, just being at Google and participating in the trans ally classes at Google. It really, really helped open my eyes to like how to talk to everyone more inclusively.
How did you socialize this rebrand with an already established community?
The rebrand part of like socializing itself wasn't that hard because it was such an obvious thing that we needed to do. We had, all the right reasons why we need to do it. And I think our new name and sort of like how we chose our new name kind of gave off a unique story. All of it really got started as well through Twitter, where we had a woman that, was very, very frustrated with our name. And it was definitely tricky and, a sticky situation, I guess. But her values and the trans community and all of their input was taken very seriously. And we really used that to help drive our efforts of rebranding. And we were very careful with like, how can we pick this new name that, really aligns with our values as well as feels inclusive and it's not biology related. It doesn't say woman in the name because once it says woman, it kind of gets complicated the moment woman is in a name.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
In a way, Hexagon is sort of a place basically for minorities in a sense, people who just want more support in the UX community. That's ultimately what we want. So if we were to just write woman, a lot of the times through feedback from our trans allies, it just doesn't feel inclusive enough for them, even though woman means cis women and trans women. To them, it wasn't inclusive enough because they've like dealt with so many organizations that say that, but in the end aren't actually that inclusive. So for us, it was very important to be able to like specifically and explicitly point that out in our code of conduct and our mission statement that like, this is a place for you and you're welcome. For a while, I was like, oh, maybe we could put, like an asterisk and just say like what woman means for us. But that isn't good enough, like just saying that. So the full woman and non-binary individuals is like,
it's very important to your values.
Yeah. And for me, I've learned in the last 6 to 8 months how important that is.
So how did you come up with the name Hexagon?
That was a fun process.
The whole rebrand didn't end up being as long as I really thought, but the naming part was really hard.
It was like 95% of it was choosing a name.
It took forever to pick a name. And once we got the name, the rebrand itself, the logo stuff was 2 weeks.
Also trying to figure out, like, does anybody else have a similar name? Is it already trademarked? Can you say it in a crowded room and have somebody understand what you're saying, which was part of our one of the problems with XXUX. We had a lot of really interesting names.
We came up with 3 that we thought, okay, maybe these have potentials, which was Thrive UX, We UX, and Go Boldly. Turns out Go Boldly already exists, or like something similar. And then We UX and Thrive UX, to me, they were too literal. It felt like another UX organization. I wanted something that was more symbolic with, a deeper metaphorical meaning behind it. So I was brainstorming more, and I came across a news article on beehives and why you want to structure your team culture similarly to beehives. So I was like fascinated because I was like, oh, that's really cool. So in this article, it talks about how like beehives, they're sort of symbolic for really great collaborative teamwork environments, because in a beehive, you have to have organization and structure and leadership to be able to like have a sustainable beehive. And they're all female bee workers as well, which was like, oh, bonus. Yeah. The moment I thought about the beehive category, I got all these ideas of like, oh, shapes and illustrations of bees or color association with yellow. Whereas Thrive UX it was just so vague that I like had no ideas. I like even just thinking about the rebrand, I was like, I wouldn't even know what logo to do for Thrive UX. And then eventually we kind of broke it down to the really simple, like, you know, shape of beehives and, you know, just hexagon.
You've done this nice little touch of including kind of a speech bubble mark into the logo itself, which I think also, again, just really hammers home the point of community and conversation.
There's a ton of variations with logos. Should the speech bubble be bigger and one bigger, one smaller? And we're like, no, this is equal community, you know, equal voices. So that was also like a conscious decision of, you know, making the hexagon speech bubbles equal. And then we have a color version where it's yellow and sort of like a fuchsia pink. And we wanted to target bold colors. We wanted to feel bold and empowered. And we also wanted to help others feel empowered and bold.
There's no pastel colors in there.
No.
Extremely conscious.
Yeah, very intentional decision to avoid
pastels.
pastel colors.
Yeah.
There's a big section of your website around mentorship. How important is mentorship to the Hexagon community?
I think it's super important. I think mentorship in general for anybody's career, I think this is why we wanted to emphasize it and focus on it. So how the mentorship program came to be, and I think this speaks to a lot of what we want Hexagon to sort of be, is we had a few women in the community who every time I went to an event, and they would say this separately to me, you know, we need a mentorship program. And literally like after 3 or 4 events, these 2 or 3 people continually saying this, I was like, all right, this sounds like a great idea. We don't have any time. I was like, okay, well, like you external people in the community, like go forth and do. And they came up with this really great structure for a mentorship program. And it's one of our most popular things. Like our events are great when people come and meet each other, but the mentorship program, I think, is what people talk about the most.
Why do you feel mentorship is so important?
I feel like I'm really lucky at Google where we have so many great designers around, really amazing and talented and supportive women that mentor me as well. But not everyone is at a place that has all these resources. And a lot of our community members, like they also don't come from a UX background, which is even harder for them to kind of like get their foot in the door because they just don't know who to talk to. That mentorship is like extra guidance and support.
What are you planning to do in 2018 and how are you growing?
So with 2018, we've just recruited a ton of new volunteers for the Hexagon Steering Committee. We've had a lot of different projects that we've always been wanting to do, but we never had enough people for it. What I'm really excited for Hexagon is to develop the online community a little bit more. How can we help all the other people that don't have access to a Hexagon chapter in their city? So we just recruited somebody to manage a Medium account for us. So then we can start kind of writing articles and tips and highlighting chapter leads and sort of building that online presence a little more and providing resources more for them. But we also want to provide our own content so that our voice and like our mentorship, knowledge, and that sort of thing is kind of like spread out as well.
Ali, what are you excited about for 2018?
I'm excited for our new leadership to take over. I've been acting as like a director, global head. We never really had like legit names before, but I acted as director for a while, and now Fiona is taking over that role and becoming the leader of Hexagon and the steering committee. I'm really excited with where Fiona and the team is going to take it to the next level. Fiona has a lot of really great ideas, and she's a fantastic leader.
Fits into my yay folder.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you some quickfire questions. What's the best advice you've been given?
Never stay at your first job more than a year.
Oh, no. This is my first job.
A friend in college told me, never stay at your first job more than a year. I was like, really? A year? That seems like really short. He's like, yeah, but when you're first getting out of graduate school or whatever school you're coming from, they basically are looking at you as a student. So to stay on that team, you're just going to always be viewed as like the junior person, was like his main advice.
What's the lesson that's taken you the longest to learn?
I want to say something along the lines of like, even if you're the juiciest peach on earth, not everyone likes peaches. Learning that no matter like how hard you try to be like a certain person or mentor or figure or whatever you want to be, like there's still gonna be people you can't please no matter what, and you have to like accept yourself for who you are and be okay, and as long as you like who you are. And that's part of like my like self-growth.
So fantastic. I need that as like my desktop wallpaper.
What's an example of true leadership that you've experienced?
When I think of like great leadership, I think of someone who's able to tackle the difficult questions and, you know, do the difficult sacrifice-y sort of task. It's like when you really have to like step back and question and challenge things. And I think that's what I look for in leaders.
And finally, what keeps you up at night?
I think ideas of how to help people.
Oh, wow. Like ideas in like a bad, like you don't have enough ideas?
No,
or?
just too many ideas. I get excited.
That sounds like you, Fiona. I have too many ideas.
I just get really excited thinking of like cool ideas.
I think for me, it's interpersonal relationships keep me up at night. I'm a people pleaser.
Fiona, Ali, thank you so much for your time. This has been really great.
Yes,
Yay,
fantastic. Thank you.
First podcast done.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Just a final word from us at Google Design. You can find more information on Hexagon in the show notes at design.google/podcasts and on their website, hexagonux.com. This episode was produced by Barbara Eldridge and edited by Brian Gordon. Artwork was created by Skip Hirsch and recording was handled by Sebastian Zek. Please subscribe on Google Play, iTunes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like this episode, please leave a review. It really helps new listeners find the show. All right, that's it from us.